Shifted, Chapter 1. I'm just saying, there's nothing wrong with chasing them, Jasper says, giving a slight shrug. Maybe not, but think of what would happen if your instincts took over, Frost says, absentmindedly stroking the apple in his hand. Its ruby skin gleams under the midday sun, illuminating the forest in soft amber rays. You know I'm more careful than that. Jasper growls in response through a layer of jagged teeth, his stubbornness showing as bright as every one of those slick fangs. He'd refused to transform back, even when he returned home. The two of them continued to make their way to the sacred tree in silence, Frost slowing down slightly. The tree was a willow that blotted out the sun, shading the clearing the two step into. Its grand branches display an array of lilac flowers that hang like a curtain around the clearing. Frost parts some of the flowering branches as they enter. Both of their eyes are immediately drawn to the forest spirit Creedray, who sits in a shallow pool about the base of the tree. Her hair flows like the branches of the willow itself, and she glows faintly like the evening fireflies. She beckons the two, droplets of water descending from her sleek arms as she does. "What do you have for me today?" she asks in a delicate voice as soothing as a midsummer breeze. The two men bow as they come to a stop. "I have chased off a band of poachers and saved a baby fawn from the river today," Frost says, keeping his head down as he speaks. "I chased a human all the way back to the village walls. He didn't get away easily either," Jasper says, flashing his stained teeth. He watches as her dark lips pull a frown over her pale green face. "Think of all the good you could have done in that time. Instead, you bring suffering onto another," she sighs, golden hair falling across her face as she shakes her head. Jasper's gaze drifts towards his paws. "Humans are cruel. They no longer care for these woods or you," he says, daring a glance at her through his peripherals. "Why spare them?" Creedray stands, sending ripples across the pool. "Because they are alive, and life may not always be good, but it's precious and unique," she says, waving a hand to Frost, who bows once again before leaving. "What is a forest without the birds to wake us in the morning, or the bees to bring spring and a bountiful harvest? All things serve a purpose, Jasper, as do you. Go now and fulfill it properly." "Yes, Creedray," Jasper says, bowing. He turns and sprints off on all fours, the sun setting to his back, its sinking gaze shading the trees in a soft honey that makes their shadows stretch across the grass. A shriek pierces the heavy summer air, making Jasper's fur stand up. It sounds distinctly human. Jasper stops and raises his head. The forest is silent. It's the kind of silence that follows a large animal moving through the area. He remains still. The breeze dies down, leaving stagnant air that's once again shot by a feral cry. This time Jasper traces it. He darts off in the direction of the sound. Jasper bursts through the brush up ahead, landing in a clearing. His eyes lock onto a shaggy wolf at least twice his size, staring down at a young man. He appears to be unarmed and bleeding from his right leg. Based on the way he's dressed, Jasper wagered a guess from the local village, which is unusual. The wolf snarls, revealing its glistening array of teeth. Jasper steps between the two, offering a growl of his own, a warning. He looks back to the man, who's already scrambling to his feet. Before he can put more than a couple feet between him and the beast, he falls, splashing mud on his blonde hair. "Please," the man shouts at them both, "just let me go." Jasper takes another good look at him. The man is similar in age to himself. His now tarnished hair rests gently just above his shoulders, in curls that brush against his face, a face wearing a terrified expression, accentuated by his already large eyes, pulled larger still by fear. Jasper turns back towards the wolf, baring his teeth and watching the beast mirror his actions. It wasn't going to back down. If Creedray wants him to protect the living, even humans, he would. At least just this one time to get her off his back. The wolf lunges, mouth wide with intent to kill. It snatches the air in its jaws as Jasper leaps clear. He turns with a bite of his own, landing several incisors wedged into dark fur. The beast recoils in return, snarling before setting his sights on the downed stranger. Jasper charges forward, paws slipping on fresh blood, drawn with a jarring cry. The wolf turns its dripping maw just in time to be sent crashing to the earth by Jasper, who feels rage mounting like a pissed-off grizzly bear. For a moment, he thought the adrenaline was the driving force behind his increased power with which he struck the wolf, until he saw a massive brown paw. A pair of them, in fact, attached to his body. He looks down at himself, realizing he had changed form. Then he looks to the wolf, who is still as death. "Shit," Jasper says. "I've really done it now, huh?" He laughs bitterly, looking back at the human. "And for you of all things." The man watches him through blinking slits that keep threatening to stay closed. Can you help me? The man stutters in a weak and breaking voice. He must be in bad shape if he was asking a shifter for help. They were far more dangerous than any lone wolf. Well, I didn't save you just to have you die on me, Jasper growls, taking a step towards him. Then the sacrifice would be a real waste. He felt his strength leave him, fur fading back to his brown skin and toned arms. He brushes back a few stray strands of his wild curly hair with his now human hand. With the other, he traces the outline of his face, lingering on his narrow jawline. It's been a while since I've been like this, Jasper starts, closing the distance between the stranger and himself. You're lucky to get to see it. He effortlessly lifts the man over his shoulder, who lets out a quiet grunt from either pain or being startled. Jasper can feel his warm blood wet his shoulder and soak into his tunic. That stain wasn't coming out. I'll take you to the gates, but that's as far as I go, he says, reaching into a satchel with his free hand. He digs around until his hand strikes the smooth surface of his mask, which he promptly affixes to his face. He then begins the trek, moonlight setting in as the sun hides her face. After some time, the man speaks up. Thank you, he manages in a whisper. Yeah. Just stay out of the forest from now on, idiot, he growls in response. What the hell were you even doing here to begin with? The blonde laughs, but then yelps in regret. I sometimes like to come out here to relax. The animals are very kind to people, he hesitates, usually. Jasper rolls his eyes. They trust the shifters. A good portion of them stay human most of the time, he says. Well, I'm glad for it. A deer will sit beside me as I read, so long as I bring bread for them, the man says. Jasper can hear the smile in his voice. So that's why they've been getting fat. He sighs. The crickets sing as he minds the path. The leaves quiver against the early autumn breeze. It was perhaps one of the last nights of the year Jasper would hear their song. Then the frost would come. I'm Ash, by the way, the stranger says. Do you have a name? He shifts slightly, flinching once again with what seems like pain. What, you think shifters don't have names? Jasper asks, scowling out of Ash's field of view. We were born humans. We have names. Some changed them after making the pact, but we aren't just beasts. No, that's not what Ash sighs. Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Damn, you're a real pushover, huh? Jasper laughs a bit. The town gate's coming into view between the trees. He can see a couple of guards having some sort of exchange just outside. Jasper emerges from the tree line, catching their eyes. He can see them both ready their weapons, and stare him down. He shoots a glance to Ash on his shoulder. He didn't seem too far gone. A week's rest and he would be fine. It's Jasper, by the way, he says. Although I can't imagine it's much use to you, since we're not going to meet again. I wouldn't be so sure of that, Ash says, grunting a bit as Jasper slowly lowers him off his shoulder. We'll see each other again if fate desires it. Life has a funny way of working out like that. He smiles. Jasper gives him one final look. I think people make their own fate, he says, turning to dart back into the woods as the guards approach.